Wasatch Report, shooting straight on everything from prepping to politics.
Welcome, everybody, to the Wasatch Report. I'm Suzanne Sherman, and this is the Cerberus Radio Network, where we defend liberty and freedom from the flames of tyranny. Today is Thursday, April 11th, year of our Lord 2019. We have got so much stuff to cover today. I'm going to have to skip my opening weather and wildlife report, but I think I'll do a nice summation for you on my Facebook page. You can follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Cerberus Radio Network. CRN is our fan page. You can follow me at Suzanne Sherman's The Wasatch Report. We are on YouTube. We have a live chat. So if you're in there, please make your opinions known. Got a story that I think is going to, I had a little debate with somebody last night, and it involves whether or not your personal risk allows you to put others at risk. It was an incident involving a medical issue. We'll get into that a little bit later. We're also on SoundCloud. Please follow us there. All of our shows are available for free download. Like us, follow us there. We are working on a radio network website. Until that is complete, even after, you can follow me at SuzanneCSherman.com. We have a social media bar there. You can click on SoundCloud. You can click on YouTube. That will get you directly to all of our shows. All of my blogs are there, as well as are the published articles from 10th Amendment Center, the American Conservative, as well as the Abbeville Institute. Speaking of the Abbeville Institute, I just recorded, thank you very much, Jeff Johnson, for doing this with me last night, another episode of Fundamentals of Federalism. And in that one, we present the audio version of The Problem with Lawyers and the Constitution. One of the topics I discuss in that article is the fact that lawyers are not educated properly on not only the Constitution and federalism, hence the point of the show and the article, but they are sorely illiterate when it comes to issues such as nullification and secession. Speaking of secession, one of the people that was at the event in Dallas, the symposium on nullification and secession, hosted by the Abbeville Institute, was a gentleman we've had on the show here before named Marcus Ruiz Evans, and he is the founder of Yes California, part of the Cal Exit campaign. Now, Marcus was on Laura Ingram the other night, and he had sent an email to a group of us saying, hey, is there anything specific you want me to cover on this? So my contribution was to suggest that, people need to be educated on what secession really means and not be brainwashed into the Texas v. White or Lincoln settled that argument. Secession really is the solution to the violence, the anger, the hostility, the division that we are seeing today. When two people can't get along, two kids in a classroom, what do? They separate. They go their separate ways, and you can do so peacefully. Decentralization is key. We need to have an adult conversation about that topic, something Marcus Evans tried to do on the Laura Ingrams Show the other night. 9 to 10 minutes of time I will never, ever get back. Miss Ingram squandered an opportunity to really educate her listeners. But again, judging by what I saw, it was something that's another reason why I just don't watch that network or her in particular. It was the Laura Ingram monologue. It was not an interview. It turned into an absolute diatribe where Marcus was just getting interrupted at every moment. So if you go to our Facebook pages, you can actually see Marcus doing what he does very well, and that is putting forth the argument for secession. And he spoke for about 30 minutes at the Abbeville Institute meeting that we had in Dallas, and he is literate, he is concise, he is articulate. So listen to that. It was just a waste of time again, and very disappointing, but really exactly what I expect from Fox. You get analysis there as deep as a bird bath, probably because they have something we don't have, and that's a ton of advertisers to take up all their time. We have a nice long format where we can really dig in and examine these issues here. Jeff, I know you didn't see that, but it was a very frustrating episode episode to watch. Also, we're going to have a coming up episode of Case in Point with Dave Benner, our resident historian. I'll be covering Barron versus Baltimore with him, and we're going to review his chapter of his book, The Compact of the Republic, the sweeping clauses, which were the means by which the general government has exponentially expanded beyond its delegated constitutional authority, the power that it has over the states and we the people. We were going to record this yesterday. I was a little bit under the weather yesterday, so we didn't do that. Joining me in the studio today is Jeff Johnson, a producer and friend extraordinaire. How are you, Jeff?
I'm doing well, thank you. And I didn't see the Laura Ingrams Show. Honestly, I don't watch any of those networks. I don't watch CNN, NBC, Faux, any of them, because they are presenting a package that is approved by government. And I don't care. They're all propaganda.
Well, the thing that was so annoying was it was all about her. She had to throw in the fact, I guess, to remind her listeners that she's a member of the California Bar Association. It had absolutely nothing to do with the topic of the interview. Again, it was all about Laura. But you know what? It is aptly called the Laura Ingrams Show. So go ahead, listen if you want. I want to get into a case, not a case, my lawyer's showing. I want to get into a story that I came across on a Libertarian Show Facebook page. And I don't like the labels. I don't call myself a libertarian and I don't call myself a conservative. We really don't know what all these values mean. But this was an incident. And Jeff, I wanted to discuss this with you because you are an EMT. And we had a conversation with our good friend Mark Kreslins. As we know, he almost died from what they call a widowmaker heart condition. And his wife had convinced him to go to the emergency room. But then the issue was, well, is she going to drive him or are they going to call an ambulance? We actually discussed that on the show, that it is better to call an ambulance than it is to get in a vehicle when you are not in the frame of mind, when you've got a loved one about to perish. That is not the time to get behind the wheel. Now, this contingency is probably going to call me a rotten, stinking statist for what I'm about to say. But sometimes you can be so blinded by hatred for law enforcement that you can't really see what the true solution here could have been or how to avoid the situation altogether. So this is an incident that happened. It's discussed in Des Moines. It was Des Moines, Iowa, KCCI, Channel 8 in Des Moines, Iowa. Nurses bail out a dad arrested for driving 100 miles an hour to get his choking daughter to the hospital. You know, if you want to spend your money and bail somebody out, you're free to do so. That's not my point here. But let me just share the story with you here now. Darius Hinkle told Fox News that his heart dropped when he noticed his 1-year-old was choking on a penny. Let me interject my feelings right here. The survival mindset, as opposed of the anti-cop mindset, is, what is the first thing you need to do in a situation that's very dangerous? Don't panic. The more panic controls your judgment, the worse your decisions are going to be. Am I correct in that assessment of a medical emergency, Jeff?
Yes, absolutely. Whether oops, I'm getting some feedback from somewhere. Anyway, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's being lost or, a motor vehicle accident. If you panic, you're going to start making mistakes. You're going to make the situation worse. Stop, take a deep breath, and let your training take over. And in this case, it doesn't matter who you are. You should at least take a basic first aid class, because you have family, you have friends. You should know how to do basic things: CPR, the Heimlich maneuver, dress a wound, anything. So now, if you're not taking it, you really are doing a disservice to your family and friends.
Yeah, and the reason we had feedback was I started to talk over you. I wanted to let people know that you are speaking from experience. You were an EMT. So you were
I was a paramedic.
A paramedic. Okay. So as a paramedic, you have come across these situations. So here's what he said. The first thing in my mind was get her to the hospital. That's my daughter. I'm not going to let anything happen to her. He admits there were lights and sirens behind him for miles as he sped 100 miles to the hospital. He finally arrived at the hospital with the daughter and the girl's mother. They told us to get out and put our hands up. As I got out, I put my hands up and yelled, and I told the police my baby is choking, and I told them multiple times she was choking. They were just worried about the fact that we were speeding 100 miles an hour through city neighborhoods is not just speeding. I'm going to share commentary from our good friend Andrew Avery, who just submitted his opinion here. He risked at least 4 lives with his decision. Call an ambulance. They will get to you at least as fast as you can get to the hospital. I submit to you faster. Additionally, there could be a cop in your neighborhood who would be dispatched with first aid training. Learn the Heimlich and use it. I think it's crazy if there are parents out there and don't know it. It is irresponsible. Risking more lives is the worst of several options. Now, let's look at some of the other facts here.
And I have to interject here.
Yes.
Just about every police officer is at least basically first aid trained. And almost every one of them has first aid supplies in their trunk. I don't know of a law enforcement car that doesn't have some sort of first aid supplies in their trunk. Had he pulled over, that officer might have been able to do something for the baby and do the Heimlich, whatever is necessary. And all he had to do was pull over. But again, he continued 100 miles an hour. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Exactly. He drove through these neighborhoods for several miles at 100 miles an hour. Had he pulled over, like you said, if this baby was truly asphyxiated, not breathing, this could have been what saved her life. And here's what's so frustrating is the people that are arguing all of a sudden now go to speed limits. And whether I agree, speed limits are really stupid. We got pulled over for going 50 and a 40 on these unincorporated county roads in the middle of nowhere. We're not talking really about speed limits here. And yes, he had a suspended license. Again, that's not the issue. My comment was, I would prefer he would have performed the Heimlich maneuver and then called for help. Or if you know the situation's going on, first of all, dial 911, put it on speaker, do Heimlich. The mother was also present. She could have called for assistance. Again, there could have been a police officer in the area. And you know what? I don't care how much you hate police officers. If your child is not breathing, I actually saw a video of a child that was truly asphyxiated and the officer brought it back by doing the Heimlich and some CPR. So really, are you going to put your hatred aside and let your child be saved or just keep driving down the road? I have to say, I think that, as you said, had he pulled over, they might have assisted this child. Training, just like with firearms, learning how to protect yourself, having a plan ahead of time. What did I do when I was pregnant and I knew I was going to have children? I learned baby CPR. I learned the basics of CPR. You should know it anyway if a family member. I live way out in the boondocks. I've had to perform the Heimlich here twice, believe it or not. Had I tried to panic and drive through these mountain roads at 100 miles an hour, I would have put our lives in danger or somebody else's. So what they're really saying here is, because we hate police so much, we're going to say this person has a right to put their own and your life at risk, rather than being personally responsible, having some training, and stopping and thinking. Folks, this is the survival mindset. That mentality and defending it means that you are willing to put others at risk and your children at risk because you don't want to be, a statist? Am I going off the rails here, Jeff? And I know Junk Bond's here. We'll let him contribute too.
No, you're not going off the rails. So here's if someone is choking and they're making noise, they're getting air. They're getting air through into their lungs, so they're not in imminent danger of going into respiratory arrest. They may, but you have a little bit of time. So just slow down, get some, you need to get this training. I mean, if you can even do the Heimlich maneuver, it's time to go see somebody, get a little training, and then you will be a better asset to your family and friends.
And again, the mother was in the car as well. So here are two people who didn't have the training. They had a 1-year-old, and this would have been something that was easily resolved. And kudos to the nurses who put their money out and bailed them out. That's fine. This isn't really a libertarian issue. This is a personal security, personal safety, survival issue. Junk bond. Huh?
You said during our prep, what did you say about your family? You're walking around. I'll just jog your memory with that. If you were walking down the street and this guy's coming down the street and he mows your family down.
Yes, that's my first thought was, what if my kid's walking across the street and they just mow him down? What you're saying is he has a right that is superior to life over my family because he panicked? No. Junk Bond is in our chat going, prepare. Junk Bond, weigh in here. Get that mic on.
Guten Tag. Guten Tag. How is everybody this morning? I'm glad I could make it here today.
I am too.
It was most dubious on the way over, but we're here. My daughter was supposed to move this morning, and now with circumstances beyond, quote, everybody's control, baby Sasquatch and I are going to be cruising down there around noon or so. So I got back here as soon as I could and fired up the smoking lamp, filled up the coffee, and am ready to be a positive contributor. This guy's a knucklehead.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, this is stupid. This is completely stupid. I appreciate you trying to save your kid's life, but that should have happened before you had the kid.
Yes.
That's when you start. I remember back in high school, I used to wrestle on the wrestling team. I wasn't that good. My record was like 6-15 or something like that. I was, mediocre at best. Well, probably less than mediocre because I had a losing record, I guess, right? But the guy who wrestled heavyweight for us, his name was Steve. And I remember Steve came out and did this hip throw and got this guy on the ground and was beating him up. And the next thing I know, Steve's on the ground underneath him. And I hear Steve, I can't breathe. I can't breathe. I can't breathe. And my coach yells at him, if you can talk, you can breathe. Shut up and wrestle. Well, the same type of a concept here, like Jeff was saying, right? If you can talk, you can breathe. If you're not blue, you're breathing. It's very simple. I did advanced first aid training and a whole bunch of other stuff along the years. I served on an ambulance crew for many years, combat lifesaver for the Army. I've seen times when people can't breathe, and they can't breathe. I've rescued infants before. Infants have a good way of telling you they can't breathe. If they're fussing around in their seat, they're breathing.
Yep.
If they're not fussing around and they're laying limp, they're not breathing. It's day and night. There's no gray line here. There's no question about it. This guy panicked.
Yeah, and
that's what happened. He wasn't prepared and he panicked.
When I mentioned that in my commentary, the response was, well, what is he supposed to do? Google it? Oh, for crying out loud. So I just stopped following the whole thing.
Google it. How do I prepare to have a child in my family?
Yeah, exactly. The time to Google is before such an incident happens. Again, it wasn't even an option. Well, maybe we should call and get some assistance here. So the moral of the story, and we're going to move on, is prepare. There's a baby in your house, baby's on the way. There are free first aid classes you can take pretty much anywhere. They are available. Again, me being in a remote area, I have to know some first aid here. I've already said I've used Heimlich here twice when help is not on the way. And I said, what are they going to do if they can't even solve a problem like this when help is not available? I've done shows with Dr. Bones, Joe Alton, MD, who has a book, actually. It's just 95% about right in there of medical issues you are going to have when medical help is no longer available in a collapse area, in a collapse or, major event like a hurricane or something, you can solve yourself with some basic training and taking the time to know. But saying my heart dropped and the only thing I could come up with is speeding through the streets at 100 miles an hour. Stupid, stupid, stupid.
Wrong.
We have breaking news, and I am so glad you are here today because Julian
I
Assange,
hate when the news breaks.
better than when the wind breaks, but Julian Assange has been arrested.
What? Oh no.
So I want you're our guy on this. Now we know that he had been charged in Sweden with some indiscretions with minors, a sexual assault charge, I believe. I don't want to.
Yeah, they were all dropped. All those charges were dropped.
They were all dropped. So what
Yep,
reason?
not substantiated.
What is the reason then for his arrest? Can you run with this story?
I can run for the next 6 hours if you'd like. Sure. So basically, Julian Assange was arrested for skipping bail in related to the charges that were dropped against him. Now, if there's no crime, I don't understand the exact working of the legal system. So you're going to have to help me with this. If the charges against him were dropped and he didn't need to show up in court in the first place because there's no charges against him, is there still a charge because he skipped bail up front on something that is not even in the system anymore? Can you help me with that part of it, Suzanne?
Well, even if
Because it sounds like they're just trying to catch him with a
and
catch-22.
there will be. As I'm looking at the cursory headlines on this, Obama didn't like him. I don't think the Clintons liked him very much.
No.
And he released a lot of secrets. And I remember when these stories were being covered, it wasn't the media, of course, as we know, is the lapdog of the government. The media was focused on why or how the information was released and not the content of the story itself and the absolute corruption that these leaks were showing. And somebody once said, look, if you found out that your spouse is cheating, are you going to be more upset that you found it out or that it was found out by looking at the phone or the fact that you were cheating? I'm more concerned with the fact that our government was cheating. Call me crazy.
I am too. And it's interesting that somehow, so he's going to get, he'll get, I don't know what, a $25 fine, $50 fine for skipping bail in the UK. But because they only, if you murder like dozens of people, the max penalty you can get in the UK is like a weekend without crumpets. So they're looking at charging him under, it's a combination of things. He helped Manning, and I'm not going to say she because it's a he.
No, we don't do that here.
He helped Manning get a password hacked in government computers. So he's going to be charged with conspiracy in violation of the CFAA, which is the Computer Fraud and Abuse Act. Now, this was a U.S. cybersecurity bill that was enacted back in 1984 as an amendment to existing computer fraud laws under Title 18, which is all the law enforcement stuff that they're not allowed to do. It was written to extend the existing I want to say it right, the tort law on intangible properties. So basically, computer stuff is not a tangible. You can't touch the data on a computer. If I have a light bulb, I can touch a light bulb. You break my light bulb, you owe me for a new light bulb. Right? You mess up my data on my computer, well, that's really not a tangible item. It's not something you can take it and transfer it into a tangible item like a document, but it's not tangible in the state it's in. So there were no laws that covered cyber crimes. So they updated the system, and now since then the act's been amended 3 or 4 times then the Patriot Act amended it again with the Theft Enforcement and Restitution Act. So there's several things piled together here, but the short of it is they're saying that he helped Manning by getting a password to him that broke into a computer that stole secret information. Now, I don't know how much of it. This is weird because it's really weird. I mean, they're making stuff up here. They really are, because Manning didn't need any help to get into the system. Manning already had access to the system. You know what I mean? The guy was an intel analyst. He had access to the system. He didn't need a stinking password provided by somebody else. So there's really no crime here committed by Assange. It is trumped up, per se. The real story here should be how the U.S. got the new Ecuadorian president elected by having him promise to deliver Assange to us. That's where the real story should be focusing right now, and it's not.
I haven't seen that on.
There was no problem with. Oh, I'm sorry. Let me just finish my thought real quick here. There was no problem with the previous president letting Assange remain in asylum in the Ecuadorian embassy. There was no problem whatsoever. Elections came, new president came in. Guess what? The first thing he says, "Oh, this guy's got to go." And there he goes. Now he's within 9-10 months. The guy is out of the embassy. That is definitely a payback for getting elected. No question about it. There's the real story. U.S. meddles in Ecuadorian presidential elections. Go ahead, Suzanne.
And Assange gets handed to the powers that be on a silver platter. What do you think, if anything, Donald Trump is going to do about this? Do you think he'll issue a pardon? And where is he being charged? Why is he being arrested now?
Well, Assange is being arrested for jumping bail in the UK. He's being extradited to the US.
Why the US? If he's being,
I think it's under the RICO Act that he's being.
Why?
Of course.
Yeah. If the RICO Act were legitimate, Congress would be in jail here. Okay. What do we need?
My God, what happened to the Congress? Like in what's that movie? Mars Attacks. They blew up Congress. That's a great idea.
Pardon me while I have a fantasy here. Again, this folks, the stuff we talk about here, you're not going to hear about this. I don't think CNN, I don't think MSNBC, I don't think Fox, I don't think any of them are going to hit this angle. What did the Ecuadorian president do to effectuate this release or kick him out of the embassy to hand him over to the United States government? Ultimately, as you said, payback for getting elected. Yet we have half of this country up in arms, no pun intended, over Russia meddling in our elections when we do it all the time. I have a story
without any evidence that they actually did.
Right.
Oh, picky, Jeff.
We had an interesting issue out here in Salt Lake City. And I usually start out the show with, local news here, but I wanted to cover these others first. We had a shooting actually on State Street. And this is an area I frequent. When I go to my little hangouts, I go from Interstate 80 up State Street. And we had a dude that just opened fire. KSL.com, there's a quote here. It was absolutely rapid fire. Man dead after shots fired. Now, again, we're going to come up with some sort of assault weapons, claim about this thing when they start rapid fire, police chase through Salt Lake. Now, Salt Lake City, this happened the other day. The man was killed by a police officer. A police officer also suffered minor injuries. Shots were fired at a Salt Lake hotel. They chased the vehicle to South Salt Lake Monday morning. South Salt Lake City, by the way, is the most dangerous part of Utah. Salt Lake City's beautiful, but kind of like Washington, D.C., you take one wrong turn and you are in a bad area. I am always armed when I go there. I'm always armed anywhere, but still. The driver of the vehicle was a 37-year-old from West Valley City. Shots were fired. Police had responded to reports of shots fired at a hotel. And Laura Bennett, this is again, listen to the language she uses and think about what I started the show with about the survival mindset and staying calm. Laura Bennett, Deseret News reporter, was in the parking lot of the McDonald's across the street from the hotel when she heard the gunfire. It was terrifying. From what I saw, he was just firing at the entrance of the hotel. He was in the driveway, part of the front of the Sheraton, and just opened fire shooting. Yeah, these are tense situations, but if your first response to this is terror, and she even says, I don't know much about guns. Folks, when you know much about guns and you have one on you and you know how to protect yourself, I'm not saying that for instance, if I was where she was and I'm armed, do you think I'm jumping into the fray? Hell no. But I'm certainly not going to stand there and pee my pants and be terrified. Be calm, be rational. If he comes your way and you can't get a place to escape, which is really the first thing you should try to do, stay calm. Panicking will kill you. The officers arrived anyway, so they chased him. They chased him into a business storefront, and the officers are now on leave while this whole thing is evaluated. And so far, this sounds like a local issue. Am I right, gentlemen?
Yes.
Wrong. Feds want to know where downtown Salt Lake City rampage suspect got his gun, because clearly this is the feds' business. Yes. So let's see. They are saying now that they want.
Did you just bring the feds into a local issue again?
No, they did it.
Why would you do that? Why don't you just let them stay out here with me in DC? I'll keep an eye on them.
That would be wonderful. Yes, do something with their computers.
Dear God.
I
can't. I'll get arrested under the RICO Act.
So let's see. The feds want to know now how this guy was able to get a firearm in the first place. As we know, now he was a member of a prohibited class. Again, we're going to see more clamping down, more gun control, and here's where this is going. When they're demanding to know where he got this gun in Utah, for now, you can purchase a firearm privately and not involve an FFL dealer. We know Congress is squawking about getting rid of private sales across this nation, pardon my French, but stuff like this gives them fodder and is going to be used by the histrionic, hysterical gun grabbers in Salt Lake City, and we've got a bunch of them in our legislature here. And they're going to be joining the feds in this march for getting, and you know what? This probably wasn't even a private sale. He probably stole the firearm for all we know. We just saw a study that said 90% of firearms used in crime are acquired, get this, illegally.
Ooh, that's amazing.
Is that just mind-blowing?
That's not what I hear in the narrative.
Democrats also want to expand the number and types of prohibited possessors. Now, this guy was he was a member of a prohibited class, I believe, because he had a sawed-off shotgun. Again, that would be an issue for Utah, not a federal issue. By the way, a sawed-off shotgun brought us what incident in the mountains of Idaho, Junk Bond?
No way. It was a sawed-off shotgun.
It was Ruby Ridge.
Oh my gosh, that's right. I didn't.
And we're talking like an eighth.
Wow. I completely didn't even think of that. I mean, that's the most insane thing in the world.
This stuff is all related. People just think, these are all random. No, this is one big web. So
you stumped the bond. Look at that. Holy cow.
This is out of Arizona. Democrats in the House of Representatives expanded the number of classes of people prohibited from exercising constitution.
Not allowed to exercise?
Oh, I wish.
Oh, come on. What is going on? I keep missing this stuff.
Be quiet. I'm talking.
Yes, ma'am.
Constitutionally protect Second Amendment rights. These prohibitions have been added to HR, and I said this was from Arizona, but that's where the amaland.com is. This is a federal law added. So prohibitions have been added to HR 1585, passed the House, goes through the Senate, hijacking a reauthorization of the Violence Against Women Act. This was also, the gun grabbers were hiding behind women in the Lautenberg Amendment, which made anybody that had retroactively, by the way, it was applicable, pled or convicted. This is the problem of misdemeanor domestic violence. With the misdemeanors, they often force you to just plead out. The expense of going to trial, plus they will often exponentially increase the penalties if you exercise your right to a jury trial. So most people just plead out. So you do this, and now retroactively, you are forever included as a member of the prohibited class for misdemeanor domestic violence. So the NRA never commented on this act because it was never included in gun control. And this is where they're trying to expand on it. As we know, the NRA participates and gives their blessing to a lot of gun control, as we've seen. In 1968, this article says the number of classes of prohibited possessors, those who are not allowed to possess or own firearms, was greatly expanded. Before 1968, the classes of people who could not possess them were decided by, guess what? State law. The Gun Control Act of 1968, after that was passed, 6 categories of people who are not allowed to purchase them from federal dealers were created. And this included classes which did not exist in most states. Again, this is the problem with calling these pre-existing rights constitutional rights, because as I've discussed in my article, how Heller botched the Second Amendment. When you call these restrictions rights, they can regulate them. The Second Amendment merely reiterated that arms were not within the purview of the general government, period. So quickly, the 6 categories are: if you're not a legal resident of the state where federal dealership is located, none of the Fed's business, by the way. People under the age of 21 for handguns, 18s for rifles and shotguns. Again, not the Fed's business. I don't need to repeat that because that is a continuing theme here. Convicted felons or those under indictment for a felony. Again, if somebody is so dangerous they cannot be trusted with a gun, don't let them out of jail. Fugitives from justice, those adjudicated to be mentally defective or those who have been involuntarily committed. Mentally defective, that is a really obscure term, and don't think for a nanosecond that they're not going to run with this one. Unlawful user addicted to a controlled substance. Well, what about the 33 states in Washington, D.C., where it's lawful to use marijuana, medicinal or recreational, depending on your jurisdiction? The feds still, on their ATF Form 4473, prohibit you from owning a firearm, even if it is legal to use marijuana in your state. 1987, Congress added 4 additional categories. Illegal aliens, a class they were never constitutionally authorized to classify, let alone prohibit from entering this country. Persons dishonorably discharged from the military, persons who have renounced U.S. citizenship. People are subject to a restraining order, and here's where we get dicey, for domestic violence, harassment, or stalking. Harassment can be pretty much anything. So now they're going to expand this April 4th, 2019. Democrats in the House expanded this last group of domestic violence by changing it from intimate partner to include a dating partner or former dating partner. How do you determine what dating is? I mean, really. So again, what they're trying to do here is simply expand the list of people that they can prohibit from owning or possessing a firearm.
Can I add one?
Yes, go ahead.
The medical community has been suggesting lately that video game addiction is just as strong as heroin addiction. And I think you're going to see some verbiage changes up in the future if we get a DSM code for video game addiction. That's going to require them to be on medication or something like that. You're going to see this group of folks added into those with mental defects and others that have addiction to controlled substances. They're going to broaden that.
What about
Go ahead.
Facebook addictions?
I was just going to say that. What if you've been in Facebook jail a bunch of times like me? Are they going to look at my social media record? We see New York City, I think it's New York State, is wanting to look at your social media before they will issue a gun permit. And then as they can work with Facebook categorizes us. You can even find out what they think of you by going through your own settings and ad preferences, and they will categorize you. I am categorized as very conservative. Meanwhile, the conservatives I interact with on Facebook call me a damn communist.
And you also have you're going to have the addition of binge watching addiction also. Tests have shown that it releases dopamine, and that's why people end up binge watching different types of shows and things like that. So I think the category that you're talking about is going to be expanded in such a manner that it's going to almost include everyone. So legislatively, they'll exclude or eventually preclude people from being able to own any type of handgun or rifle whatsoever.
Well, and look at the DSM now is also categorizing ODD, oppositional defiance disorder. So now defying authority is considered a disorder. So the result of that, conveniently, is they can disarm the very people the founders sought to protect.
Suzanne,
Those defy tyranny. Go ahead, Jeff. Go ahead, Jeff.
Okay, I'm going to go into the chat room here.
Awesome.
All right. Bill says, here lately in Oklahoma, there have been a group running around calling themselves Second Amendment auditors with AR pistols slung over their shoulders, enticing confrontation with police. And next, we have Bob, our jury friend, aimed at you, Suzanne. Facebook felon on air. Okay, there we go. We're caught up with the chat.
Well, your Facebook rap sheet must be long, sister.
It is. In fact, I don't know anybody else that was in for 30 days and had another 30-day sentence slapped on them before they finished the first one. But Junk Bond, you brought up a really interesting point here, is video game addiction. A couple years ago, I was flying out to California, and on the plane next to me was a teenage boy, and we started talking, and he said he hadn't been back home in a couple years. Why? I asked him. My family sent me out here for wilderness therapy. Huh? Yeah, I was addicted to video games because I never had friends in school. Everybody bullied and teased me. So I just turned to video games and friends that I made online playing them because they never, it was a safe place for me. They never taunted me. And I said, what do your parents do? My dad's in finance and he likes to golf. And then he mentioned his mother's job and the community, where they live. I was very familiar with it, very wealthy, gated community. And now here he is going to wilderness therapy because his parents, I could discern from the conversation, really didn't spend time with him. Folks, spend time with your kids, not money. The private schools and the money you spend on them, your gated community, your landscapers, all that crap is no substitute for spending time with your children. But I digress here. So
one more disorder.
Yeah,
if I can just throw this in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think it's going to cover everything. There is compulsive internet use, problematic internet use, and internet addiction disorder, which is being considered for a DSM code right now.
And like I said, I've been warning a lot for a couple of years at least now, is that your medical doctor is not your friend.
Not at all.
He is a collector of information for the government. So when he asks if you have guns, number one, lie. Very first thing you do is say, no, I have no guns. Never, ever say it's none of your business. That goes down as a yes.
That's a yes.
Lie,
right.
lie. Second thing you do, if he's going to ask you, how are you sleeping? And you think that's a benign question. Oh, well, I don't sleep well at night. You are now a mental health patient. He is going to put you down as being mentally ill because you can't sleep at night. Again, lie. I sleep like a baby. Lie, lie, lie. Don't tell your doctor anything. Tell them what you're there for, and that is it. Because they're going to use it against you.
That's right. Well, if you tell them you sleep like a baby, then that means you get up every 20 minutes crying and wanting a bottle.
Who the heck came up with that phrase anyway?
I don't know.
Andrew also weighed in here. There are 22,000 federal, state, and local gun laws. The 22,001st is the one that's going to make the criminals lay down their arms, slap their foreheads, and say, "Oh, you mean me?" That's so true. That's
great. We've been waiting for that like forever now.
We're so close. I have some good news.
The law that broke the criminal's back.
Right. You guys want to hear some good news out of Florida?
They're seceding.
They're lifting, this is huge. They're lifting the ban on front yard vegetable gardens. I like to talk about tyranny. I don't just whine about Washington, D.C. Tyranny it has become hardwired in our society. We saw this back with the Puritans, that just made its way across this continental landmass. So we've talked about this before, how nice it would be if in any time, not just times of trouble, but say times of peace, people can have community gardens in their front yards where it's kind of a given. Here, you're growing zucchini. I'm growing tomatoes. Here we have herbs. Here we've got somebody growing medicinal herbs. Okay, legal ones. Okay. And we can all share in times of trouble, all the better. But what we see is many communities ban this in the interest of having aesthetic, common appearance. We want, we have a certain desire that we want our yards to look a certain way. So here is an article here, and this was from Return to Now, that Florida has used a state law to stop the municipalities from banning these gardens. State lawmakers in Florida have told cities they must respect citizens' property rights and seemingly even more basic right to grow their own food. If you really want to respect property rights, stop property taxes. But we're not going to go that far. That's just crazy.
How much do I pay every year to rent my property back from the people that can take it anytime they want?
I went to the county treasurer and said, I'm here to pay my rent. I was just,
I put it right on there. This is extortion.
Wow.
I call it a crime. It is. I'm not renting from them. They're extorting me. And they'll send guys with guns to enforce their extortion. I put it right on my check. I put it everywhere now on the envelope everywhere. I tell
well, if you don't pay that money, you're going to go stand tall in front of the man.
Well, my little bit of
defiance, move me or kill me.
My defiance is when I put a stamp on an envelope and it's a flag. I put it upside down, and if it says liberty, I cross it out on there. Maybe I'm defacing a stamp. But they passed a bill prohibiting local enforcement from regulating vegetable gardens on residential property. Here's the kicker. The legislation was inspired by a couple who had been tending a beautiful, and there's a picture of this. I'll have to put this on our page, a beautiful front vegetable garden for 17 years when the town of Miami Shores told them it was illegal. And it forced them to tear it up. There's a picture. This garden is absolutely gorgeous.
Bring it down. Tear it all down.
Yeah. Burn it to the ground. That's a horrible. There's a song, but we don't admit to listening to it back. It doesn't matter how they tended their tomatoes, beets, scallions, spinach, etc. They called this view unsightly. The couple argued there wasn't enough sunlight in the backyard to grow these vegetables, where the town said, well, you need to grow them there. Well, be that as it may, this law was repealed. Do you think that they're going to be reimbursed for the cost of having to destroy this beautiful garden and rebuild it? No. No.
Why would you do that? That would set a precedent.
Exactly. As we run out of time here, I found something else here. The Rutherford Institute, and the head of this is actually on my Facebook page. I'd like to get him on the show one time. Napping is not allowed. There's a ban on sleeping your cars in cars that could allow police to seize car occupants, vehicles, and carry out warrantless searches. Now, this is related to the other story, because here, this was in the Roanoke County, Jeff, or Junk Bomb. This was in your neck of the woods. Maybe you should go take a nap in your car in Roanoke, and we can make a show about this. The Board of Supervisors adopted a code in February of 2019, and we have an ordinance that prohibits people from using automobiles for sleeping, despite the fact that the problem of sleeping in cars is not widespread, has cropped up only occasionally over the years. In proposing the ordinance, the county staff were repeatedly concerned that the use of automobiles for sleeping can have a negative effect on neighborhood aesthetics. Again, we use neighborhood aesthetics for an expansion of government authority over your property rights. The ordinance specifically proves that it shall be a Class 4 misdemeanor for any person to use an automobile for sleeping quarters in place of a residence, hotel, or similar accommodations within the county. Now, whenever I talk about ordinances, laws that come up, look to who might be behind this issue. Heaven forbid a weary traveler might want to sleep in their car instead of going to a hotel. You know, we had this kind of a share. I don't know if this was Airbnb, but there was something in San Francisco where people would advertise spare rooms in their house for tourists to come and stay in. The hotel industry nipped that in the bud. You cannot make decisions with regards to your own private property that impact the bottom dollar of the hotel industry, just so you know. So,
what if you can't afford a hotel and you're traveling through?
Well, then you can go to jail or pay a fine. The ordinance defines hotel and automobile, but does not define sleeping or otherwise limit what kind of sleeping violates the ordinance. But here's the thing. What they're saying is, if you are caught doing this, you're going to have a fine of $250. Again, how much of this is really about generating revenues? Subjects them to warrantless searches and searches by police. The government officials have opened themselves up here to illegal jeopardy by enacting this code. This, ladies and gentlemen, if you are charged with something like this, jury nullification, jury nullification, jury nullification. This is the problem. They're going to make it so expensive to go to trial. But if you educate people about the importance, go to FIJA, Fully Informed Jury Association. They are on Facebook. It is your right. It is your obligation as a juror to refuse to convict, regardless of the jury instructions, when a law or the application thereof is unjust. This, ladies and gentlemen, is a perfect case, as is the one for growing vegetables. I mean, seriously, what do you think the prosecutors, what do you think the city is going to do when they realize the public has had enough of their bull crap and said, you know what, maybe we need to not only not enforce some of these laws, but maybe we should take them off the books altogether. Thoughts, gentlemen?
During nullification, our friend Bob is listening today. Go to his site. He'll tell you all about it.
I would like to see a politician run on a platform of repealing laws and and having a benchmark set to have X number of relevant laws reviewed and repealed with a timeline for usage or timeline for us to review in some logical and common sense manner. Other than that, I may never vote again.
Didn't Trump run on, oh, he's going to get rid of regulations, getting rid of regulations? Well,
no, I didn't see any. I didn't see any timeline. I didn't see any actionable things there. It was just talk.
We took his word for it that he was going to change the way the government did business. Wow.
I didn't go for that.
Yeah. Well,
I didn't vote for him.
He told us he was pro-life and he was going to protect babies. He was pro-Second Amendment and he was going to protect guns. Well,
he turned out to be pro-NRA, right? No rifles in America.
That's right. Oh, no rifles in America.
Yeah, that's what he turned out to be. He wasn't, pro-Second Amendment. But anyway, I digress on that. So, yeah, go ahead, Suzanne.
I have another story I wanted to share as well. And the funny thing is, I put it in my Facebook messages here. And now, of course, in Messenger, it won't let me find my own damn name. But I'll share the story about, it was a toddler that was a woman. And I can't read the story because Facebook won't let me find this message that I submitted to myself so I could find it quickly and easily later on. There was a woman who she was 8 months pregnant, and her 3-year-old, excuse me, who she was told she could not pick up, had to go potty. She pulled over immediately to a nearest gas station, trying to get this kid out of the car. And the boy just said, I can't hold it any longer. And he had an accident. He had to pull down his pants and go in the parking lot of a gas station. She was cited for this incident for not using a bathroom when one was readily available at the gas station. And as this woman had said, what if I couldn't get him there because somebody was in the bathroom using it? Would it have been preferable that this kid have an accident on the floor? This, ladies and gentlemen, is why people get upset about police officers. It shouldn't be because a gentleman who was flying down the road at 100 miles an hour when he had a multitude of more sensible options available to him. Focus on other things rather than your angst at police officers. Save it for crap like this and for enforcing ordinances where people can't sleep in their own vehicles. This is absolutely insane. Again, I hope they charge this woman with a misdemeanor, because the problem is they'll get you with a lot of infractions where there's no jail time at issue. And again, I cannot access the article quickly enough. If it's a misdemeanor, stick to your guns, ladies and gentlemen, and say we are going to jury trial on this. The problem is it's often very expensive, and the DA knows this. There's some great attorneys that will represent you pro bono. Nicholas Somberg out in Michigan, he's one. We had him on before when somebody was cited for warming up their car in Michigan, sub-freezing temperatures, so they could get a toddler and his girlfriend in the car, and he took it to court. So there are people out there that will help you and advise you. We're about out.
Has common sense slipped out of the minds of everyone anymore? Like from the police officers, oh, okay, I understand. I got it. Your kid couldn't make it to the bathroom. Boom, move on.
Exactly.
Is everybody that stupid anymore? I don't get it.
How important is it to enforce a law like that? We've all been there. I don't think I know anybody, including myself, who hasn't had their kids with a little a bathroom emergency in a parking lot. It just is part of life. We're about out of time, everybody. Hopefully, Jeff will be available. We could do a show tomorrow morning. And I will be gone next week, but we are recording some shows, and hopefully Junk Bond and Booger will be able to come on a few times next week. I'm hoping
we shall be here. Yes.
Reach out and catch up with you guys as well. Until then, hopefully we will catch you tomorrow, depending on Jeff's availability. I want to thank everybody for listening. This has been the Wasatch Report. And on behalf of the rest of us here at Cerberus Radio Network, I'm Suzanne Sherman. We've got Junk Bond, Greg Carpenter, and Jeff Johnson. We want to thank you for listening. Have a great day. God bless you.